Hello, I'm Joe Walensky, Conference Director for ConveyUX as we go into our 14th year, taking place April 13th in Seattle. And I'm pleased to be able to chat with the feature speakers from the event. And today I'm visiting with Peter Coffey. Hello, Peter. How are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm joining you today from Renton. I'm local to the Seattle area, have been since the beginning of 2018, and very happy to have the prospect of doing this with you without getting on a plane.
Well, I am from my home office in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 80 miles north of
Mhm.
Seattle, and the conference began in the Seattle area and continues to be in the Seattle area. So we're looking forward to our upcoming event, and this is just a good time to chat a little bit with you. And a good place to start is if you could tell us a little bit about your background and the nature of your work.
I spent the last 18 years with Salesforce. The job was created essentially to bring into the world the idea of cloud as a platform and not just a delivery mechanism for packaged applications. My job was initially called Head of Platform Research, and we had just debuted the notion of a platform license. That is to say, as if Windows had only ever been sold with Office, and they had a new idea of offering it to you, without Office. And you could have put other things on top of it. And that was a 2,000 person company, which is now closer to an 80,000 person company. And by a significant margin, the majority of the work that is done by the cloud underpinnings of Salesforce serves applications that are not Salesforce products. So the notion of cloud as platform clearly resonated with people who didn't want the capital burdens and the operational difficulties of managing an infrastructure stack and really wanted to put all of their effort into what was differentiating for their customer experience. I did those 18 years at Salesforce after 18 years in the print technology media back when that was a thing. The publication was PC Week when I started and had evolved into eWeek by the time I was done. And that's where I got to know the kind of people who wound up, offering me the Salesforce job later on. Prior to that, I spent some time in aerospace and in oil and gas, out there doing real projects in places ranging from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic. So that's pretty much how I got to where I am now.
Well, you've had a wide variety of experiences. How have the most recent challenges been going with you?
The challenge at every step has been to help people realize that using the new technology to do the old thing better can have kind of a sugar high of quick but not very sustainable returns. And that stepping back and saying, well, wait a minute, what are the things that we thought about but couldn't do or never even thought about at all that the new technology makes possible? What are those things? And it's a much more difficult conversation to get started. But the people who do that receive enormous results. I mean, you can see an example in something like Amazon. The early web page was a page. It was like a page of a catalog or a brochure delivered in HTML. And Jeff Bezos wrote the famous memo saying, from now on, everything you do is going to be exposed or consumed as a service. And when you look at a web page on Amazon, it's not an HTML page. It's a crafted, in the moment, personalized orchestration of, I believe the current number is something like 800 different services coming together to give you what they believe you're most going to be interested in seeing. And that model of interacting with a resource, not as a static, preconceived, scripted interaction, but rather as a dynamic, personalized, and ad hoc response to what you seem to be trying to do, is a theme that's been with me now for well over 2 decades, including in my prior work in the print media. And today, with the introduction of so much more of the AI derived technologies, it's at least as important as ever to get beyond the idea of better automation of what you did before and into the revelation of what we can offer now at scale in the lower price segments of the markets with the kind of white glove personalized service that used to be a luxury domain.
Well, the topic that you chose to speak about has the title Conversational Computing, Freedom from the Flowchart.
Indeed.
So tell us a little bit about how you came around to that topic and what people can expect to learn from it.
Yeah, well, the very first code I ever wrote was basic on a machine with paper tape punch, and soon after that, punched cards on a hulking giant mainframe at MIT in Fortran. And these were programs. These were, here's the series of steps I'm going to perform. Here's the input I'm going to receive. They were chunks of logic with dedicated silos of data, and a lot was accomplished. And back then, you talked about computerizing something. It began with a paper process, and then you wrote code, and you dealt with the limitations of a green screen and the green and white striped pajama paper coming out at the other end. The next step was to look at a paper form and say, well, wait a minute, we can actually make this form appear on the screen. The what you see is what you get. The era that began with Xerox and quickly became identified with Apple and very soon afterwards with Microsoft of the form on the screen. The model of programming at that point switched from writing code to automate a series of steps to designing a screen to mimic a paper form. And the whole Visual Basic model, if you ask me, and people do ask me, took this to a fault where designing the screen and then wiring up a rat's nest of logic on the back end produced applications that were very quick to build, very difficult to maintain, almost impossible to move from one platform to another. They had the limitations of the original design interface deeply wired into everything that had been done. So that was a useful phase. It exploded the graphical interface into mainstream use. But quickly people said, well, what about mobility? What about smaller screens and bigger screens and speech-enabled devices so that I can work on this with my car or in a hands-free environment? And you needed to move to notations like XML, like HTML5 that allowed content to fit itself to the container and fit itself to the kind of interaction that someone wanted. So we were getting places. But even then, your interface might have a button you click or a voice interactive, please say one if you want this, please say two if you want this other thing. There was still a script to be followed. Where we are now is on the threshold of something that doesn't lock you into the designer's conception and anticipation of what you're going to want to do or what options you're going to want, but rather is designed to respond to natural language, not to a finite list of keywords, that's designed to be able to draw upon your history of past interaction, maybe with permission to draw on the digital breadcrumbs that you've been leaving in other places, the actual history of your interactions with every channel they have, your email interactions, your website browsing, all of the things that combine to create a conception of you as a customer, a patient, a student, a client, a citizen, and really make the person whose needs are being met the center of the design instead of being an annoying nuisance who has an email thread over here that's not connected with a phone log over here, that's not connected with a web trail over here, but really be customer centered. And I've had experiences, for example, with banks where I would say, hey, if I walk in the door, I've got a checking account, a savings account, a car loan, a home loan, a kid's educational savings account. How many of me do you know? And they look at my upraised fingers and they say, well, we know the five of you just talked about. And then we know the other two that we're marketing to without any knowledge that you're already our customer in these other areas. Say, yeah, let's do better than that. And banks that have redesigned their model where the customer has the things the bank does for them as attributes of the customer instead of all of those things being separate silos. Now they can help you on a life journey that begins maybe in childhood and continues through the time when you are taking care of older parents, simultaneously taking care of your younger children. It is a revelation to them that they can change the manner in which they do business by seeing that interaction as a conversation with a person rather than a portfolio of specific and distinct scripted interactions.
Well, I know from your bio that you had worked a lot with an agentic platform development and deployment at Salesforce. And so you're related to the things that you were just talking about. How did that manifest itself, most recently in terms of working with your team and uh, planning ahead for what were probably going to be some significantly different ways of thinking about your work?
It's been interesting over the last 3 years to look at an abrupt surge of enterprise interest in next 12 month deployment of AI that was up in maybe the 80, 90% range immediately after the initial flood of new awareness of these large language models that then dropped down into the 60% range for the next 12 months as people started to realize that if you haven't gotten your data available, consistent, properly hygiened, properly protected from a privacy and process point of view, that doing the AI without that data foundation being ready is not going to produce the kind of returns you want. It could be a dangerous distraction and maybe even result in the AI finding things that it never was supposed to find at all. And so the decline of expressed interest in next 12 months was not a loss of momentum. It was a gathering of understanding of what needs to be done and helping companies understand. Lou Platt at Hewlett Packard once said, imagine what we could accomplish if HP only knew what HP knows. The idea that companies don't realize what they know. And if they do, they don't always have it under proper disciplines and management of regulations that range from GDPR to California Consumer Privacy Act to any number of other state regulations. And these are important regulations. They're brand destroying and customer trust busting if you get this wrong. You can lose a customer in a moment if they feel you've been careless with their data. And the conversational interaction means that conversations may go places that were not anticipated, and the machine may demonstrate an almost undesirable level of ingenuity and spontaneity and saying, oh, well, what about this? And the customer says, wait a minute, this is connected to that. I didn't think those things were connected. I don't want you triangulating me like that. So it's really important to appreciate the capability, to recognize the foundation work that needs to be done before that capability is relevant, and also to have the guardrails in mind so that the conversations go in places that are delightful rather than intimidating or concerning.
Well, so a lot of very interesting information there. It gave me some things to think about, and it's been great to spend a few minutes talking with you about your background and the things that you're going to bring to the conference. So I'll look forward to seeing you in person in Seattle.
I look forward to sharing more then. Thanks for your time.
All right, thanks a lot, Peter. Bye bye.